The National Museum of the American Latino, established by Congress in 2020, doesn't have a building of its own yet, but it just unveiled something that does help establish its presence in the meantime, a new logo called the Iris. For more about the logo and the museum's progress, generally, we turn to its director, Jorge Zamanillo. Mr. Zamanillo, good to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
And before we get to the logo, just give us a progress report on the museum itself. You have presence in one of the other Smithsonian institutions, but you're trying to get a place and a structure?
We are. I've been here a little bit over 2 years now, and we continue to do well, fundraising, building the team, starting to build a collection. But the most important thing for us, of course, is, finding a site for the museum. And while we do that over the next decade, as we build the museum also, we have the Molina Family Latino Gallery, which is located at the National Museum of American History. And in that gallery, we have an exhibition now titled Presente, which covers really 500 years of Latinos in the U.S. And that exhibit will be up through next year. And we'll keep rotating exhibitions in there over the next decade while we build a museum.
And where are the items, artifacts, things to show? Where are they kept in the meantime as you rotate them in and out?
Yeah, so we have items in that exhibition that are on loan from other Smithsonian museums or institutions outside the Smithsonian across the world. So that's very helpful while we build a collection. So we're even building storage right now, trying to find storage to acquire and build this national collection over the next decade where you have thousands of items coming in that will be featured in our new museum.
I guess we have implied but haven't stated that Congress may establish a museum, but that doesn't mean it appropriates enough money to buy land and tilt up a new structure, does it?
No, it doesn't. Well, they are generous in the sense that they task us with building a museum, and we raise half the funds, the money needed for that, and the other half comes in through appropriations. But in order to do that, we still need to find a property, right? A place to build these new museums that we're tasked to build. So right now, there's a bill that was introduced that will help us, as a bipartisan bill that will allow us to build on the National Mall. And that's very important. So we're hoping that gets passed this year.
Yeah. Is there a rough location on the mall? Because the mall's getting filled in, decade by decade.
It is. There's not many properties, open spaces left. So we studied over 27 different sites in the past 2 years to find that ideal location based on transportation corridors, public transportation, visibility, accessibility. So there's a site we identified. We call it the Tidal Basin site. And it's basically a big field that's just west of the Holocaust Museum, between the Tidal Basin and the Holocaust Museum, just south of Independence. And that's a site that we feel is an ideal location. And that's the one we recommended to the Board of Regents, our governing board. So now we're just waiting for permission to build on that site.
Yeah, I know that site, and it's a thing I think everyone who drives by there or strolls by there or tries to bike by there will recognize it when they see it. And, well, let's talk about the logo. It's called the Iris. Tell us more about it and how it got designed and put into existence.
Yeah, we're excited. Part of our awareness campaign is this brand recognition, new colors, new logo. So we came up with something we're calling the Iris, and it resembles an eye or symbolizes looking for clarity, right? And in this storyline, providing that vision that we need about unifying and bringing all these stories together, the interconnectedness of Latino communities across the U.S. And it's also very vibrant and, and kind of enticing to learn more, what brings it together is interwovenness. So we're really, excited about that.
Now, the two main colors, sort of a turquoise and maybe a royal or navy blue, do those have significance?
Not right now. They are definitely colors that bring trust into our name. But we have variations on that. So if you see the animation we have on our website, it also shows some more earthy tones, some browns and yellows and some greens in there. And we'll use different variations of this logo as appropriate. So there definitely are some other vibrant colors that we're going to bring into the mix.
Who did the design work? How did you? I imagine you went places to try to find a contractor for that.
Yeah, no, we worked with a couple of the different teams and consultants to help build that. And then with the staff and input from stakeholders and board members, we came up with something we felt was this first iteration, right? One of many, right? Because that's what happens when you build a museum or any kind of company. You have a logo, and then hopefully when we come up with the design of the building and we have that new stage, right, in our development, maybe there will be another iteration of that. So this is an ongoing process as we evolve over the next decade before we open.
Well, as it looks, I think it would make a heck of a good-looking T-shirt, if that was on the back.
Definitely. Yeah, we do have a site. We do have a merch site online on our website where you can order T-shirts and mugs and caps and everything else.
All right, swag. We're speaking with Jorge Zamanillo. He's the director of the National Museum of the American Latino, and I want to get a sense of how you conceptualize what should go into a museum. It's easy for any subgroup of the American experience to render itself as a cliche. But when you really look, and you mentioned 500 years of Latino involvement here in North America and what became the United States, there's business leaders from all around the world. There was a legendary Cuban president of Coca-Cola. So you have people in industry and business as well as the arts and everything else. So how do you get your arms around what do we say about ourselves, the Latino experience in the United States?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of stories to highlight. And one thing that we do in the Presente exhibition is that we do try to bring out some of those legacies and some of those stories, how they shaped the American history narrative. Everything from, like you said, entertainment to military history. Just, first astronaut in space that was Latino. It's amazing. I was talking recently to Ellen Ochoa. She's the first female Latina pilot in space, but I didn't realize when I met her in Boise, Idaho, she's retired there now, that she was also in charge of the Johnson Space Center for many years. She was director of that Johnson Space Center, and she was on 3 space shuttle missions. So you start having these conversations with these really pioneers in our community, and you learn so much more, and you realize there really are stories that are not, we need to bring forward, right? We need to make sure they have their presence and they have alongside other stories on the National Mall. So what we're doing over the next few years, and we started doing this already in the past 2 years, but we're going to continue and increase our presence in communities across the United States. We visited over 35 cities, 20 different states with our team. I'll be visiting a couple of different cities this year alone before the end of the year, just to engage with different communities and really connect with people and see what they want to see in a museum, see what's out there, collect oral histories, eventually in a year or so, start a collecting initiative to bring in those, Lonnie Bunch, which is our current secretary. He was a founding director of the African American History and Culture Museum, and he had a great success with that Treasures program, right? Going out into the communities and seeing what's out there, and also helping people learn about preservation and preserving their stories and their objects. But I think one of the most important things is also working with other museums and community groups throughout the nation to make sure we have that buy-in and trust. That's so important, not only to engage now, but to continue that engagement over the next decade and beyond, to make sure we are that kind of community-centered museum we want to be.
Right. I think sometimes people overlook the fact of how diverse the museum community is in the United States in terms of size of institutions. And sometimes you run across a little tiny place that's unbelievable in a local community. Is that the case for, say, Latino types of exhibits and preservation?
I think so. There's only a handful of museums that are really dedicated to the Latino story. There's a Mexican art museum or something that's more specialized. But when you really come down to it, there's nothing that really encapsulates, who we are as a nation. And that's a first. And this is a national museum. So there are some expectations for, what a national museum looks like. And we're actually trying to break that mold. We're trying to change that up a little bit, right? If you think about this museum when it opens in 10 years or so, it's going to be a completely different museum that would exist today on the National Mall. Not only from the appearance and the architecture, but the way we take in content, the way we interact. When a visitor first walks in there, what are they going to see in 10 years in a museum? Especially with, I'm not saying it's going to be technology heavy, but we have to realize there are different methods and ways to engage now with technology. So it's going to be quite a different experience. But the African American History and Culture Museum started to break that mold, right? When you visit the mall, the building even looks different than every other gray concrete building you see along the east-west corridor there. So it's good to see that kind of experimentation and kind of pushing the envelope, right? What can we do to really connect with communities and say this building visually is also a symbol of who we are?
Right. The British Museum of the 1930s is not really the state-of-the-art model anymore, is it?
Right, exactly.
And you've got some events happening in this particular month.
It is Hispanic Heritage Month for a couple of weeks, and we had an amazing event last Friday for Celia Cruz to launch the new quarter, the first Afro-Latina on it. So that was a very successful event. But we also have an event coming up on October 12th where we celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month at American History. And that's going to be a whole day showcasing Hispanics in sports. So if you have any interest, it's a family-friendly event all day with local celebrities and sports athletes from the Olympics and interactive and